What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Kelvin and I'm on a mission to helping new developers understand how to build cross-platform mobile applications with React Native. Okay, so in the previous episodes, we were able to complete the various screens. We are done with the home page where we have these overview screens and this movie components cards and all of these cards over here like so. We've done the movie stub as well. We've added the movies cards with this filter components and filter icon over here, and same for the TV series screen. Also, we've added this screen, we've built out this screen, and also the profile page also has been done. All right, good. Now in this video we are going to set up or make preparations to start integrating the TMDB API to this movie app, so that instead of having this hard-coded images being uploaded on the screen, we have dynamic data, right? So we're going to have dynamic data. We're going to be having dynamic images and movie titles coming from the TMDB database. Now the TMDB database is a database that holds a lot, millions of different movie data that we can basically make use of in this movie app. So that's what we're going to be doing today. You're going to be learning how to create your own custom hook to be fetching data from APIs, and also learning how to integrate the API and consuming the API data on your client side. Now, if this sounds interesting, do what to hit the like button, and if you're new to this channel, do what to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section as well. It's going to help a lot. All right, now let's jump right into it. Okay, so first of all, let's head over to your browser and then just type in TMDB like so, and then press the first link. So the TMDB simply means the movie database, right? So you press on the first link that appears, and once you press on it, you get brought to this database or this dashboard where you can see welcome millions of movies, TV shows, and people to discover. Okay, so as you can see, they are letting you know that yes, it holds millions of movies. Good. So what you are going to have to do now is, once you are here, if you don't have an account, do what to create an account and log into that account. So as you can see, I've already logged in here, so we can just move on. If you haven't logged in or you haven't created an account, go ahead and then sign up, create an account, fill the forms, and then make sure you have an account on the TMDB. Once that is done, you can now continue over here. All right, so the next thing we want to do is come to the More tab over here, and then you press the API documentation over here because you want to make use of the API. All right, so this is going to load up. Good. So once you are here, this is just like a guide to getting started, right? So we're going to, you can see here, to register for an API key, click the API link here. Because right now what we need is the API keys for TMDB to be able to have authentication access to fetch data from the TMDB database. Okay, so I'm going to hit this API link button here. It's going to open this page for us, right? So once you are here, you can see you have your API read access token, and also you have the API key, right? Now what we want to do now is to copy this API read access token. Okay, so copy it. We are going to copy it like this, and then we are going to create a .env file inside our project, right? We are going to create a .env file here. So let's right click on it, new file. We're going to say .env like so, and then we are going to add in the environment variable. So we are going to say Expo. To add the environment variable, we just need to initialize it like this: Expo public underscore, then the name of the variable that you want to add. So Expo public, I'm going to say TMDB access token like so, and then we set it equal to, then you paste in the access token that you just copied, and then the next thing we want to add is the Expo public TMDB underscore API underscore key, like so. And then you go ahead and then copy the key here as well. Paste it in there. Okay, good. So at this point, we know we've saved up our keys. All right. Now over here too, you can see you have some documentation. Our primary documentation is located as. So if you want to get to the documentation, you just use this link to get a further understanding of how the API works and probably test out some of them. Okay, so this is the documentation page. Let's move to the API reference here and let's have a look at how the API references actually work. Okay, so currently the language is on Node.js. By default, it might be on Shell, like so, but you can change it to Node.js because that's what we are using. Okay, so over here you can see we have different tabs here. You have accounts, you have authentication, certification, changes. But all we are interested in at the moment is the discover, right? Because we want to fetch the movie and then the TV series data, right? So you come to movie, press the movie tab over here, and it should open this page for us. Now you can see that we have this setup over here. Since it's on Node.js, we have this const URL where we get to see the URL for the TMDB API that we can fetch. Okay, so over here, this is the URL, and over here too, you can see we have some query params here. Now this query param determines the type of data to be fetched when we are fetching the data. Okay, so we have certification.gt greater than or equal to, and so on. And we have include adults, default to false, it's already on false. Include videos, you are basically setting the params. The language too, you can set the language over here like so. And then a page, so it sort of paginates, so you can set the page, whether page 1, page 2, page 3, and so on. Like I said, it holds millions of movie data, right? So you can't just fetch all the movie data at a go. So it's going to be paginated for you. Or if you want to fetch movies that has a primary release year of, let's say, 2025, 2024, 2026, or whatever the case may be, once you pass the year over here, it's going to be filtered based on the params, query params that you pass in here, or if the primary release date is greater than or equal to a certain date that you pass over here, okay, and so on. So I'm basically passing the filters over here. Also, you have sort by, and these are the options for the sort by. You have the sort by original title, ascending order, original title, descending order, popularity ascending, popularity descending. Okay, so we are going to be going with the popularity descending. All right, so using this, default filters, you can simply see them being passed over here like so. Include adult is set to false here, include video is set to false, language is set to English, the page is 1, sorts by popularity dot descending, as we have seen in the query params. So you can press the try it and you should see the data being fetched at this point. Good. So this is the response from the API. You can see that here you can see the page is 1, like it's been set here, and the results is an array of different objects, right? So this is the first object. The movie type, the movie is not of adult type, so adult is false. The backdrop image part is here. The genre of the movie ID is going to be is this, and then the ID, the original language, the original title is what? The Conjuring, last rites, and then the overview of this particular movie, popularity, and so on. So these are the data that has been returned to us from this particular requests. So yeah, this is just like a playground where you can test out and see the types of data that you can fetch using this API. Okay, all right, good. So now that is done, the next thing that we want to do is that over here we want to create a reusable hook that we are going to be using to fetch data all the time, right? Because we don't want to be repeating ourselves all the time. We want to have a hook, that a go-to hook, that whenever we want to fetch data, we simply use it. Okay, so over here I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it hooks, right? I'm going to call it hooks like this, and then inside hooks I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it use fetch.ts, like so. Good. And so this file is going to export a function, right? It's going to export a function called use fetch. Now this function is just a React hook that we are trying to create, a custom hook that are going to be using to fetch the data. Now this use fetch here is going to have certain parameters. Okay, the first parameter is going to be endpoint. Okay, and this endpoint is going to be of type string. The next one is going to be the query that we want to add. Now the query is going to be a record, an object record. Okay, going to be an object record with a key of string and any value, so like so. And the default is going to be an empty object, like so. So basically this is the structure of the useFetch utility function that we'll be using. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is to add in some constant variables. Okay, so we're going to say const TMDB base underscore URL. Okay, so the TMDB has a base URL that cuts across all the requests that are being made. Okay, so if you look at this, you can see that we have https api.tm.moviedb.org/3/discover and so on. So you can note that from this point up to this point, always cuts across. So like it's the base URL, and then this part of the endpoints might change along the line, so it's not part of the base URL. So we just need the base URL, which is this. Okay, so let's paste that in here like so. And then the next thing that we want to add is this constant, which is going to be TMDB access token. Now this access token, we've already added it inside the environment variables. I'm going to say process dot env dot expo underscore public underscore TMDB underscore access underscore token. And let's add this safety over here. Now let me make sure that I've typed the correct thing. Come over here, the access token, copy this and paste it in here. Paste it in here like so. All right, good. So now let's begin creating this utility function. Okay, so we'll be needing some use state hooks over here. That's going to hold some data for us. So the first one is going to be data. All right, it's going to be data, where once we fetch the results, we are going to set the results, or the result that is going to be returned. We're going to set it inside this data state. Okay, the next one is going to be loading, like so. Do loading like so, and it's going to be by default set to true, like this. So let me remove this. And then the next one is error. So in case we have an error, we are going to record the error and hold the error in this error state, like so. Okay, so yeah, the error can be either a string or it can be null, like so. Okay, now we're going to add in a function to this hook and say fetch. Let's call it fetch data. Okay, and I'm going to be using it inside a use callback so that it doesn't re-render the components when the data is being fetched. Okay, so I'm going to say it's going to be an async function. Pass this in here, and let's make sure we are adding the dependency array here, like so. Okay, we'll be passing some parameters over there shortly. Now the first thing we want to add in here is that we want to set the loading to true from the start. Okay, set the loading to true, and also set the error to null, like so. Okay, and then once that is done, we are now going to add in a try catch block. and inside this try catch block, that's where we're going to start our fetch. Now we are going to be using Axios to handle the fetch. So what we want to do now is to make sure that we have installed Axios. So to install Axios, you simply do yarn add Axios or npm install Axios, whichever one you are using, whichever package manager you are using for this project. You can do npm install Axios or yarn add Axios, and it should install Axios for you. Okay, so now that we've installed Axios, I can go ahead and then import Axios at the top here like this. Import Axios from Axios like this. Okay, all right, so now let's continue. We're going to say const results. Where's going to be the results? It's going to be await Axios dot get, and then we pass in this template literals, and then we first of all pass in the TMDB base URL, because like we said is the base URL, and also we pass in the endpoint like so. So this is basically going to be the constructed URL for this request. So once that is done, we now pass in the parameters and then the headers. Okay, so the headers that are going to be adding here is simply going to be that is going to accept, let's say accept application JSON like so. And then the authorization, the authorization is going to be of type bearer space, and then the token. So the token is simply going to be the template literals of the TMDB underscore access token like so. Okay, and finally we pass in the query params. Okay, so the params here is going to be the query that we pass in inside this this hook like so. All right, so once the fetch request is done and then we get the data, what we want to do is to set data, the data state that we created, we set it the result dot data like so, right? And then in case we encounter an error, we can simply log it out on the console and say console.log, and then we pass the Axios error here like so, and then we simply say error dot message, passing the error dot message. So this error, we are simply going to make it in passing the error dot message, and then the error dot response dot data as well. Okay, and then we finally set the error state that we created to be error dot message, right? Or simply say something went wrong like so. Now once that is done, we can finally say that what's set loading to be false, because at this point the loading is done, or the request, the fetching that we've done is done, so we can simply end the loading. So inside this dependency area, I'm simply going to be passing in the endpoints, and then I'm going to say JSON dot stringify, then we stringify the query as well over here. Okay, good. So let me do this. So the next thing that we want to do here is, once all this is done, we can simply return the state that we created, right? So I'm going to be returning the data, and then the loading, and then the error. Now you can also add in a refetch if in case you want to refetch the data. Now this refetch is going to simply recall the fetch data function like so. Yeah, the fetch data function. For some reason there's an error going on here. Cannot find. Okay, let me just import the use callback from React, and this should solve our issue. All right, so that is that. Another thing that I want to do is pass in this use effect. Let's pass in this use effects block, and then recall the fetch data whenever necessary, like so, and then pass it inside the dependency array like so. Okay, so this is actually a very comprehensive fetch hook that you can use to fetch data from your API. I mean, you can expand it to be more complex. With what we are doing currently, we can set it to this level, you know, to be able to fetch the data and then achieve what we want by fetching the movie data from TMDB. Okay, so we can even copy this and then use it in your own personal applications. All right, awesome. So at this point, we can now go ahead and then inside the home page, you can start fetching some data inside the home page. Okay, so now that we've created a hook, we can now go ahead and then begin. So the first thing that we want to do here is to make use of the hook that we just created. Okay, so you notice that on the home page, we have different types of data being fetched. We have trending now, and then we have new releases, and then we have international picks, right? So we are going to be fetching based on these categories. Okay, so what we want to do now is to fetch for trending now. So trending now simply means movies that are popular, right? So that's what we want to fetch right now. Okay, so for that we are going to see const passing this object, and then we're going to use the use fetch hook that we just created, and then you know the use fetch hook is expecting an endpoint which is a string, right? So I'm going to pass the endpoint. Now this endpoint is going to be discover. So it's going to be /discover/movie, like so. Okay, and then we pass in the params. So the query params here is a record of key value pairs, so it's an object, and we pass in the values of the parameters that we want to add. So we're going to say we want it to include adults. We want it to be false, like we saw in the playground. And then, so let me just paste in the parameters, right? And then I explain. So these are the parameters, right? Include adults should be false, include video should be false. The language is English, the page is 1, and then we are sorting by popularity. Okay, so basically this is the parameters that are passing to this endpoint. Okay, so we can simply get the data over here and also get error and even get what loading from this data, and just like that we should be able to get the data. So if I say console.log, let me say data, and pass the data here, when I check the logs I should be able to see the data. Let's reload this back to the app. Okay, it should turn in now for some reason. Now let's check what is going on. Okay, so the issue was with my simulator. I had to make sure that it is connected to the internet connection. So now when you're on this page, as you can see, you have added a log here, console.log the data. So when you check the logs, you can see that the data is being populated here, right? Let me clean it up a little bit so that it is more visible. So we can do this console.log JSON.stringify the data you set is field to null and then to, and it should sort of beautify it for you. Okay, so this is it. As you can see, what we saw on the playground here, that's basically the same thing we are seeing here, right? The data, this is the data with page 1, and then the results. This is the results that we'll be using, the data that we'll be using to populate our UI, and then, you know, using this data to create the components, getting dynamic data from the TMDB API. All right, so hopefully at this point you are set up and then you're ready to integrate the data into this mobile application. Now, if this video has been helpful, do also hit the like button. And if you are new to this channel, do also hit the subscribe button as well. Sorry about that. Do also hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And you can feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Catch you in the next video.